Good afternoon, everybody. Glad to be here, Fairview Christian School, to talk to you about something that's near and dear to my heart. And that thing that's near and dear to my heart is Israel. Israel as it relates to Bible prophecy, Israel as it relates to the end days, current events. And there's two reasons why I like talking about Israel. One is that I was saved as a result of studying prophecies as it related to Israel being fulfilled in our time. That was a major thing in my life when I was a teen, about your age in fact. I came to Christ through Bible prophecy. The second reason why I like talking about Israel is that, like other Christians, I tend to fall into being lukewarm. I tend to become complacent. I tend to fall into sin. And every time I get around to restudying things about God's prophecies regarding Israel, something wells up inside of me and I say, man, what's going on? Get with the program. You know, this thing's real. This Bible is true. So, the topic I'm going to share with you tonight is God's sign to mankind, the miraculous preservation of the Jews, 2000 BC to present. Now that's 4,000 years there. 2000 BC to present. That's 4,000 years, and we're going to try to cover it in about two 45-minute segments today, and tomorrow we'll share the second part. Now, I want to make one disclaimer about the word Jews here. I'm a Jew, okay? I'm a Christian Jew. And I don't want you to be thinking, since I'm centering in on the Jewish people, that there's some special people better than anyone else. Because they're not, okay? Jews have problems just like everyone else does. And as a Christian, a Jewish Christian, I have heroes. Sometimes non-Christian people are my heroes. And it's a good thing to have heroes, by the way. Just as long as they're not sports heroes or acting heroes, those type of people who are living godless lives. Those type of, we're not to idolize those type of people or make them heroes. There might be some Christian athletes who do remarkable things. For the most part, they're living godless pagan lives, okay? So the type of heroes I like are the kind that help people, sacrifice their lives for people. In fact, one of my favorite heroes is a Muslim Palestinian man. And I'm going to explain about this guy in a second. Alright? I believe all men are created equal. Alright? So that's no problem here. I made this disclaimer. We're going to be centering in on the Jews, and we're going to be talking about how God has used them and used others. Now, what seed, those who haven't seen this presentation, what famous seed is this? Does anyone know? There's an aerial view of the seed. What seed is that? No. Close. Yes. No. Further away. Someone we know and love walked there, swam here, and walked out on the water. Yes, Ryan?
Sea of Galilee.
That's right, the Sea of Galilee. Alright? And here's a picture around, I think it's the 1990s, of the Sea of Galilee. Palestinians and Jews swimming in the Sea of Galilee. Apparently they weren't religious, so they wouldn't be doing this together, the Jews and the Muslims. But anyway, there was a man, a boy, out here that got caught, somewhere out here, he got caught in a rip current, and he's taken out, he started drowning. And there's a man named Andre Jada, okay? He was a Palestinian Muslim. He was out there swimming with his family. He had a wife and kids. And he saw these children, this child drown, and he did what any decent person would do. He went out there. Even though he couldn't swim, he went out there and saved the kid. He swam out there as best he could. He brought him back. He handed him off to someone in shallow water. And then a rip current came and took him out, and he drowned to death. Shortly before this happened, a chief rabbi of Israel, Rabbi Obadiah Yosef, made this statement. He said, Arabs are snakes. God regretted ever making them. He said that about a month before this guy did this heroic act. Now, if I was able to talk to this man, I would say, Rabbi Obadiah, if anything, us Jews, God would regret having made us Jews, but he doesn't regret making anyone, but if anyone, it's us, because we're the most hard-hearted people on the face of the planet right now, bar none. The hardest people group to reach with the gospel are the Jews. Arabs are coming in by the millions or thousands. The blacks, the white Anglo-Saxons, they're all coming into the gospel by the thousands. The Jews, maybe by the tens, at best. Okay? Now, Jesus prophesied this would happen, where the Jews would no longer be the main players in God's kingdom. He said, the kingdom of God shall be taken from you. Now, they were God's chosen people. And he said, we're going to take the kingdom from you because of your disobedience to Jews. And this kingdom is going to be given to a nation bringing forth the fruits thereof. Talking about the Gentile nations, the ones I talked about, the Arabs, the Chinese, the Persians. These are the ones that are main players in the kingdom. And the race doesn't go to the preferred. It goes to the obedient. Here's what the Lord said about this in Deuteronomy 7, verse 7 through 9. The Lord did not set his love on you nor choose you because you were more in number than any other people, for you were the least of all the peoples. Therefore know that the Lord your God, he is God, the faithful God, who keeps his covenant of mercy with those who love him and keep his commandments. God looked down the corridor of time. He could see that the Jews would obey him, so he used them at the beginning. In the gospel age, he used them at the beginning of the gospel age in Acts 2, but shortly thereafter, the kingdom was taken from them because they became disobedient and given to the Gentiles. But that's not always going to be the case. For Paul's prophesied, for if Israel being cast away, which it was by the time of this writing, Israel was cast away, they weren't the major players in the kingdom anymore, is the reconcile of the world, what will their acceptance be but life from the dead? So that's good news that the Jews are going to be coming back in. We're going to be talking about it a little bit tonight and maybe tomorrow. All right, let's define our proposition here. We know God means the creator of the universe. That's pretty simple. Sign. What does sign mean? A physical, external proof of a spiritual reality. And that spiritual reality is that this Bible is the inspired Word of God. No other holy book is inspired. Whether it's the Quran of the Muslims, or whether it's the Vedas of the Hindus, or whether it's the Book of Mormon of the Mormons, they're not inspired. They don't have the proofs that this book has. And this book says in Revelation 20, it talks about the great white throne judgment there in the end, Revelation 20, verse 11 through 15, that we're all going to stand before the judgment seat of Christ. Now, if you're a Christian, and you believe that ultimately everyone is going to be judged of whether or not they accepted and served Christ in this lifetime, it's going to have a profound impact in your life. And if it's not having a profound impact in your life, maybe you haven't grabbed hold of it yet. And if you're not a Christian and you're watching this, you're looking at this presentation, you owe it to yourself to find out whether this is a myth or it's a fact that it's going to happen. You should check into it if you haven't. All right, miraculous. What do we mean by miraculous? Something that could not have happened by naturalistic means alone. God had to be behind it. Okay? There's a number of ways God works miracles. He works miracles in history, divine intervention. Another one is prophecy. All the prophecy of this book has been proven to be 100% accurate. In the past, and those in the future will be fulfilled likewise. No other book has that characteristic. Okay? There are lots of false prophets out there. The miraculous abounds, but nothing compares to the Bible. Moses said this, Deuteronomy 18, 21 through 22. You may say to yourselves, how can we know when a message has not been spoken by the Lord? If what a prophet proclaims in the name of the Lord does not take place or come true, that is a message the Lord has not spoken. In those days, you didn't get a second chance. Yeah.
Your car needs to be moved.
Oh, okay. The bus needs to get out, I guess.
Should I move it?
Yeah, you could. If a prophet made just one false prediction, he would be stoned to death for his attempt to lead God's people away from the Lord, okay? So, there are a number of false prophets that come along. We're going to talk about a couple of them. Jean Dixon, she predicted in the 20th century, Russians would land man on the moon before the United States, and World War III would start in 1958. She was right on some things, but she was wrong in this. She was a false prophet. Remember, the children of the Pharaoh's Egyptian magicians did 3 of the 10 miracles Moses did, okay? First 3, the magicians of Pharaoh were able to do what Moses did, but the last 7 they couldn't handle, because God does it all the way, okay? Especially with prophecy. Edward Casey, the sleeping prophet. he was called, prophesied that during the early portion of a 40-year span, 1958 to 98, a tilting of the Earth's axis would produce drastic physical alterations of our planet. Didn't happen. He was probably one of those global warming hucksters back then too. But Nostradamus, among other false prophecies, he predicted the end of the world in July of 1999. So Satan's out there, and he gives these people right predictions, but not 100% predictions. That's how you tell the true from the false. All right, back up to what we're talking about. Jews. Now, we can't take this word for granted. The Holocaust deniers, people that ilk, will say there are no real Jews in the world today. Even secular 40s debunked this, and we're going to talk about that briefly. You can't assume this when we're talking about the Jews nowadays. A study, this is from Wikipedia about the Jew. A study published by the National Academy of Sciences found that the paternal gene pools of Jewish communities from Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East descended from a common Middle Eastern ancestral population. They came from the Middle East, the Jews all around the world, and suggested that most Jewish communities have remained relatively isolated from neighboring non-Jewish communities during and after the diaspora. Researchers, secular researchers now, not religious Jews, secular researchers, not Christians, expressed surprise at the remarkable genetic uniformity they found among modern Jews. No matter where the diaspora had become dispersed around the world, the findings lend support to traditional Jewish accounts accrediting their founding to exiled Israelite populations and counters theories that many or most of the world's Jewish populations were founded by entirely Gentile populations that adopted the Jewish faith. That was the note that I put out with the Holocaust deniers. Okay, now, let's talk about one Jew. I know whose ancestry was pure. That's my dad. This is my father, who's a Jew, and my mom was a German. Odd mix, especially in 1945 when Hitler was still waging war here. All right, my dad was raised in an Orthodox Jewish family. Okay, his father's name was Israel, his brother's name was Isaac, and Samuel, you know, but he didn't believe what he was taught. In fact, I asked my dad before he died, I said, Dad, have you ever prayed to God in your life? And he said, nope. I said, wait a minute, your father took you to synagogue, right? Yep. He said, didn't you pray then? Yeah, I know the words. How many Christian children who are raised in a traditional set format don't follow their parents' faith, but are just going through the motions? My dad was one of them, the Jews that was similar to that. Anyway, his mom said, you can't marry this German girl. And he said, I'm going to marry this German girl. She goes, okay, be good to him. Be good to her. He was good to her for 50 years, 60 years of marriage. All right. Mark Twain had this to say about the Jews. Mark Twain was a famous writer from the 19th century. If statistics are right, the Jews constitute but 1% of the human race. Actually, it's more like a quarter of 1%. Okay? Properly, the Jew hardly to be heard of, but he's heard of, has always been heard of. The Egyptian, the Babylonian, and the Persian rose, filled the planet with sound and splendor, then faded to dream stuff and passed away. The Greek and the Roman followed and made a vast noise, and they are gone. Other peoples have sprung up and held their torch for a high for a time, but it burned out. And they sit in twilight now, or have vanished. The Jews saw them all, beat them all things are mortal but the Jew. All other forces pass, but he remains. What is the secret of his immortality? And that's what we want to talk about tonight. What's the secret of his immortality? It all starts with Father Abraham. Abraham was the father of nations, as he was called. 2,000 years ago, God spoke to him. Now the Lord had said unto Abraham, get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred and from thy father's house unto a land that I will show thee. And I will make thee a great nation. I will bless thee and make thy name great. By the way, Abraham is a founding patriarch of 3 major religions: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. His name is great. And thou shalt be a blessing, and I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curseth thee, and in thee shall all the families of the earth be blessed. Now, he had a son, and God told Abraham, sacrifice your son Isaac on the altar. He was testing Abraham, okay? Abraham, yes. But he didn't make him do it. It was just a test, and he provided a ram in the thicket, and which prefigures Christ being sacrificed for us, because it can't be from human origin, it had to be from divine origin. Okay? And God said this, Sarah, your wife, will bear you a son, and you shall call his name Isaac. And I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, and his descendants after him. As for Ishmael, now Ishmael is the founder of the Arab peoples today in the Middle East. You come from Ishmael. I have heard you.